My name is Ethan, and I remember the night we checked into the honeymoon suite like it was yesterday. My wife, Lily, and I had just gotten married, and we wanted our first night to be perfect. The hotel was beautiful, old-fashioned, with a charm that drew us in from the moment we arrived. The receptionist, an elderly woman with a kind smile, handed us our key and whispered, "Enjoy your stay." I didn't think much of the odd glint in her eye at the time. The suite was everything we dreamed of: plush carpets, a huge bed, and a view of the city that took our breath away. We unpacked, freshened up, and decided to explore the hotel. That's when the first strange thing happened. As we walked down the hall, we heard a soft, sad melody. Lily thought it was beautiful, but it made me uneasy. The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. That night, we settled into bed, excited for our new life together. But as soon as the lights were out, the atmosphere changed. The room grew colder, and the once inviting shadows seemed to close in on us. I tried to ignore the feeling, but then Lily gasped. "Ethan, look," she whispered, pointing to the corner of the room. There, barely visible, was a figure, a woman in a wedding dress, her face a mask of sorrow. Before I could react, she vanished. We tried to convince ourselves it was a trick of the light, but the next morning, things got worse. Lily found an old journal in the nightstand, its pages filled with the story of a bride who had been left at the altar and had taken her own life in that very suite. The room grew colder as we read, and we both felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. That night, we were too scared to sleep. Every creak of the floor, every whisper of the wind felt like the ghost bride was trying to communicate with us. At midnight, the figure appeared again, this time at the foot of our bed. Her eyes were hollow, her mouth twisted in a silent scream. Lily clutched my hand, and I knew we had to get out of there. We bolted from the room, the door slamming shut behind us with a force that shook the walls. As we ran down the hall, the sad melody echoed around us, louder and more sorrowful than before. The receptionist was waiting for us in the lobby, her smile gone, replaced with a look of understanding. "I'm sorry," she said. "Many have tried to stay in that room, but none have succeeded. She won't rest until her story is told." We checked out immediately, our honeymoon cut short by a tale of love and loss that haunted us for years. It was only later, after doing some research, that we found out the hotel was known for that suite, and many couples before us had experienced the same haunting. I never forgot the ghost bride and her tragic story, and I'll never forget the lesson we learned that night. Some places are haunted by more than just memories. They are haunted by the souls of those who cannot let go. Years later, as I sit here writing this, I still wonder about that bride. Did she ever find peace? Or is she still wandering those halls, searching for the love she lost? One thing's for sure, though, I'll never set foot in that hotel again. My name is Jack, and I was exhausted when I checked into the hotel. The business trip had been long, and I needed a good night's sleep. The hotel was nothing special, just a place to rest my head. Or so I thought. The receptionist gave me my key with a polite smile, but something about her eyes made me uneasy. They were dark, almost too dark, and her smile seemed off. But I shrugged it off, eager to get to my room. Room 214 was at the end of a long hallway. I remember walking down that hall, noticing how each door looked identical, how the lights flickered slightly, casting eerie shadows. But it was late, and I was too tired to care. I reached my room and fumbled with the key. As soon as I stepped inside, I felt a chill. The room was freezing, and the air felt thick, almost suffocating. I turned on a heater and settled into bed, hoping to warm up and get some rest. That's when I heard it, the faint sound of footsteps outside my door. At first, I thought it was just another guest, but the footsteps didn't fade away. They grew louder, closer. I opened the door, expecting to see someone passing by, but the hallway was empty. I stepped out, looking both ways, but there was no one in sight. I decided to take a walk, thinking maybe some fresh air would help. But as I walked down the hall, something strange happened. No matter how far I walked, the hallway seemed to stretch on endlessly. The doors looked the same, the flickering lights casting unsettling shadows. Panic started to set in. I turned around, thinking I'd go back to my room, but the door to room 214 was nowhere to be found. It was like the hallway had swallowed it up. I kept walking, my footsteps echoing in the silence. That's when I saw her, a woman standing at the end of the hall. She was facing away from me, her long dark hair covering her face. "Excuse me," I called out, hoping she could help. She didn't move. I walked closer, my heart pounding. When I was just a few feet away, she turned around. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. Instead, she pointed down the hall, and I felt an overwhelming sense of dread. I ran. I don't know why, but I felt like I had to get away from her. The hallway seemed to stretch on forever, the doors blurring together. I tried opening a few, but they were all locked. My breath came in short, panic gasps. I was trapped. Hours must have passed, or maybe it was just minutes. Time seemed to lose all meaning. I kept running, kept trying doors, but there was no escape. My mind was racing, thoughts jumbled. How had I ended up here? Was this some kind of nightmare? Eventually, I collapsed against a wall, exhausted and defeated. That's when I heard it, a whisper. Soft at first, but growing louder. It was the woman's voice, repeating the same words over and over. "Find a key. Find a key." Desperate, I began searching the hallway, looking for any sign of a key. I checked under carpets, behind picture frames, inside vases. And then, in a small, dusty alcove, I found a rusty, old key. It felt cold in my hand, but I knew it was my only hope. I tried the key on the nearest door, and to my relief, it opened. I stepped through, and the hallway vanished. I was back in my room, the door to room 214 closing behind me. The next morning, I checked out without a word. As I walked past the receptionist, she gave me that same off-putting smile. "I hope you enjoyed your stay," she said. I didn't respond. I just wanted to leave that place behind. To this day, I don't know what happened in that hallway. Was it some kind of illusion? A nightmare? All I know is that I'll never forget the fear, the endless doors, and the whisper that saved me. And I'll never stay in a hotel like that again.
My name is Laura, and I've always loved staying in old historic hotels. There's something about the charm and character that draws me in. This time was no different. I checked into the Grand Victorian, a beautiful hotel with a rich history. As I entered the lobby, I was greeted by a bellhop dressed in an old-fashioned uniform. He had a warm smile and a polite demeanor. "Welcome to the Grand Victorian, miss. Allow me to take your bags," he said. I thanked him and followed him to the elevator. As we ascended to the third floor, he shared interesting tidbits about the hotel's history. I was fascinated, hanging on his every word. My room was spacious and elegantly decorated. After settling in, I decided to explore the hotel. As I wandered the halls, I noticed the same bellhop helping other guests, always with that same polite smile. Something about him seemed timeless, almost too perfect. That night, as I lay in bed, I heard a soft knock at the door. I opened it to find the bellhop standing there. "Is everything to your satisfaction, miss?" he asked. I assured him it was and thanked him again. But as he walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something strange about him. The next morning, I went down to the lobby and struck up a conversation with the receptionist. I mentioned the helpful bellhop, and she gave me a puzzled look. "We don't have a bellhop on staff, miss." "Haven't had one for years," she said. My heart skipped a beat. I described him, and her eyes widened. "That sounds like James. He worked here in the 1920s. There are stories that his ghost still roams the halls, helping guests." I felt a chill run down my spine. Could it be true? Had I been interacting with a ghost? Determined to find out more, I spent the day researching James. I learned that he had died tragically in the hotel, saving a guest from a fire. His heroic act made him a legend, and many guests over the years had reported seeing him. That night, I waited by my door, hoping to see him again. As midnight approached, I heard the familiar knock. I opened the door, and there he was, looking as real as ever. "James," I said, and he looked surprised. "I know who you are. Thank you for helping me." He smiled, but this time it was tinged with sadness. Over the next few days, I saw James often. He seemed to appear whenever I needed help, always with that same polite smile. But the more I saw him, the more I noticed the sadness in his eyes. It was as if he was trapped, bound to the hotel by his tragic fate. One night, I decided to confront him. "James, why are you still here? Why haven't you moved on?" I asked. He looked at me with a mixture of sorrow and longing. "I can't leave," he said softly. "Not until I've helped enough guests. Only then will I find peace." Determined to help him, I began spreading his story to other guests. I told them about his bravery, his kindness, and how he continued to help people even after death. Soon, everyone in the hotel knew about James, and they all started thanking him whenever they saw him. One evening, as I was packing to leave, there was a knock on my door. James stood there, but this time he looked different, lighter, freer. "Thank you, Laura," he said. "You've helped me more than you know." And with that, he vanished, leaving behind a feeling of peace. As I checked out the next morning, the receptionist smiled at me. "Thank you for sharing James's story," she said. "He's been part of this hotel for so long. It's good to know he's finally at peace." I nodded, feeling a sense of closure. I'll never forget James, the ghostly bellhop who helped me and countless others. And I'll always cherish the memory of the Grand Victorian, the hotel that brought us together.
My name is Mark, and I was excited about the conference at the Ridgeway Hotel. It was a chance to network, learn, and relax in a beautiful remote location. The hotel was stunning, nestled in the mountains with breathtaking views. As I checked in, the receptionist handed me my key and a small booklet about the hotel's history. The first day of the conference went smoothly. I met colleagues, attended seminars, and enjoyed the amenities. But as the sun set, a strange feeling of unease settled over me. The hotel, beautiful as it was, seemed to hold a dark secret. That night, during the welcome dinner, one of the attendees went missing. At first, we thought he had just stepped out for some air, but as the hours passed and he didn't return, worry set in. The hotel staff searched the grounds but found no trace of him. The next morning, there was a palpable sense of fear among the attendees. Whispers of the hotel's cursed history spread like wildfire. It was said that years ago, a group of people had vanished during a similar event, never to be seen again. As the conference continued, more attendees started disappearing. Every night, one or two would vanish without a trace. We were all on edge, afraid to be alone. I teamed up with a few colleagues, determined to find out what was happening. We started digging into the hotel's history and found chilling accounts of mysterious disappearances dating back decades. The locals believed the hotel was built on cursed land, and those who stayed there were doomed to vanish. One night, as we were searching the basement, we stumbled upon an old hidden room. Inside, we found journals and letters from previous guests, all describing the same pattern of disappearances. It was clear that the hotel was cursed, and we needed to find a way to break it. As we pored over the documents, we discovered that the curse was linked to an ancient ritual. The original owners of the land had performed a dark ceremony, sacrificing innocent lives to ensure their prosperity. The hotel was built on the site of the ritual, and the curse had been passed down through generations. Desperate to break the curse, we devised a plan. We would perform a counter-ritual using the information we had found. It was risky, but we had no other choice. That night, we gathered in the hidden room, reciting the incantations and following the steps outlined in the journals. As we completed the ritual, the air grew cold and a chilling silence fell over the room. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ground beneath us shook and a blinding light filled the room. When it subsided, we found ourselves alone. The missing attendees were nowhere to be found. The next morning, we were all on edge, unsure if the ritual had worked. But as the day went on, no one else disappeared. We hoped we had broken the curse, but there was no way to be sure. As we checked out, the receptionist gave us a knowing smile. "I see you found the hidden room," she said. "Not many people do. You may have saved yourselves, but remember, some curses are harder to break than others." We left the Ridgeway Hotel with a sense of relief and dread. Had we truly broken the curse? Or was it still lurking, waiting for its next victims? One thing was certain, we would never forget the horror we faced and the mystery that remained unsolved. Years later, I still think about that conference and the Ridgeway Hotel. Some of the attendees were never found, their fate a chilling mystery. And while I like to believe we broke the curse, a part of me wonders if the hotel still holds its dark secret, waiting for the next unsuspecting guests.
My name is Amy, and my boyfriend Tom and I were always up for a thrill. When we heard about room 666 at the old Ridgewood Hotel, we knew we had to check it out. The room was infamous for its sinister reputation, and we thought it would make for a great story on our channel. We booked the room and arrived at the hotel, eager and excited. The receptionist gave us a strange look as she handed us the key. "Be careful," she said. Room 666 has a dark history. The room itself was nothing special, just a standard hotel room with a bed, a dresser, and a small bathroom. But the atmosphere was different. It felt heavy, almost oppressive. We set up our cameras and started filming, documenting our experiences. As night fell, the room grew colder. We heard faint whispers, but we couldn't make out the words. Tom laughed it off, saying it was just the wind, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Around midnight, things took a turn for the worse. The lights flickered, and the whispers grew louder. We heard footsteps outside the door, but when we checked, the hallway was empty. The room felt like it was closing in on us, the walls seeming to pulse with a dark energy. Tom decided to play a game to lighten the mood. He pulled out a Ouija board, and we began to ask questions. At first, nothing happened. But then, the planchette started to move on its own, spelling out chilling messages. Leave and danger were repeated over and over. As we continued, a shadowy figure appeared in the corner of the room. It was tall, with glowing red eyes and an aura of malevolence. We both froze, too terrified to move. The figure slowly advanced, and the room grew unbearably cold. Tom grabbed my hand, and we bolted for the door. But it wouldn't budge. We were trapped. The figure loomed closer, and I felt a wave of pure terror wash over me. We screamed, banging on the door, desperate to get out. In a last-ditch effort, Tom threw himself against the door with all his might. It finally gave way, and we stumbled into the hallway. The figure vanished, and the oppressive feeling lifted. We didn't stop running until we were out of the hotel and back in our car. We drove away, hearts pounding, not daring to look back. It wasn't until we were miles away that we dared to speak. "Did that really happen?" I asked, my voice shaking. Tom nodded, his face pale. "Yeah, it did. We're never going back there." A few days later, we reviewed the footage from our cameras. To our horror, the video showed the shadowy figure clearly, its red eyes glaring at us. We posted the video on our channel, warning others about room 666. The video went viral, and we received countless messages from people who had similar experiences. Some even claimed to have seen the figure themselves. The Ridgewood Hotel eventually closed room 666, declaring it off limits to guests. To this day, I still have nightmares about that night. The shadowy figure haunts my dreams, and I can't shake the feeling that it's still out there, waiting for its next victim. One thing's for sure, I'll never set foot in that hotel again. And I'll always remember the terror of room 666. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more spine-tingling true horror stories.